again, that was in the back of my mind, that was me building up my confidence. So I started off in the E leagues, and I built my way up to the D, C, B, and A team. Can I say it was a calculated failure? I'm not scared of failure because that's the only way you learn. Even your thoughts, how many times have people come up with a great idea and then it just goes nowhere? Why is that? Maybe you didn't have the confidence to take it through all the way, or maybe in your mind it was a good idea, nobody else's, because maybe they saw things that you didn't see. So failure is a good thing. Don't be afraid of failure, because how are you going to learn?
Welcome to Risk and Rise, the podcast where we explore the journey of overcoming the fear of failure, embracing risk, and achieving success in entrepreneurship, creativity, and personal growth. I'm your host, Telana Simpson, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you. Together we'll discover the strategies, insights, and shifts in our thinking and attitudes that are needed to turn setbacks into stepping stones and transform fear into fuel for success. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's episode of Risk and Rise.
George Scola suffered a stroke when he was just 37 years old. But that devastating event didn't stop him or hold him back. He has since managed to not only recover from his stroke, but also from his background in banking and IT and property finance. He has started more businesses today. He's also started the Stroke Survivors Foundation. He was even invited to the World Stroke Organization to help create a Bill of Rights for stroke survivors. So despite all the challenges that life has put in front of George, his entrepreneurial spirit has always shone through in not only the way he has tackled those challenges, but in how he has learned to deal with failures and still create and grow some amazing businesses. Let's hear more from George.
No way.
Welcome, George.
Morning.
I know a bit about your background, but I'd like to just start off by asking you, when you hear Risk and Rise, what comes to mind for you?
Risk and Rise. So I suppose in my mind it equates to no pain, no gain. You've got to put in your sweat equity to get something done. And a simple example is, even the lottery. If you want to win the lottery, you got to buy a ticket. So it all starts from you, that you've got to take that first step, and you never know how big that step is. One never knows until you got to get in it. You got to commit, and whatever life throws at you, or whatever. If you're starting a business, there's one thing I can promise people, is that life will throw you curveballs that you have no idea exist. So you just got to try and prepare yourself for that and be very fluid, so that you can take the hits while you have your goal in mind, and just you're going to take a few hits along the way, but always stay true to your goal.
Now, I was going to say, you've definitely had your fair share of things hitting you.
Yeah. So I think during my recovery, the one lesson I learned very quickly is never ask the question, what else could go wrong? Because trust me, you'll get hit with such things from left field that you never knew existed. So, So, you just got to rise and risk and rise. Take the hits, and you'll always be going in uphill direction, but every now and again you'll take a few hits, and then you'll stagger and get up and continue. don't be scared of those hits. Yeah, that's part of growing.
So I'm going to get into a bit more detail with what helps you to take those hits and that fluidity, that adaptability you spoke about, because I think that really comes out with your story. But maybe to give people some context, I mean, you have a very strong entrepreneurial spirit within you. When I was preparing for this, I was amazed. Like, you've come from the banking world, you started the foundation, you've I believe you're now involved with Hempsol and Bee Beverages. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's taken me a long time to get there. So in 2008, I had my stroke. And prior to that, I was in the process of setting up a property finance company. Well, the company was set up. I was collaborating with Investec, setting up a securitization platform. And the reason I was collaborating with Investec is because the sales channels that I had developed were very strong. So yeah, I was on a great trajectory, and then a little speed bump came along, and it was a stroke. And then while lying in bed in hospital, the markets crashed. So after 2 months in hospital, I was discharged, went home. Cognitively, I was nowhere near any condition to deal with things. And at one point, I tried to go back too early, and I was sitting in a boardroom, and the next minute I burst into tears. And at that point, I realized, okay, maybe this is not for you anymore. So, I realized that cognitively, I wasn't functioning at 100%. And then, with a couple of months later, I also got divorced because of the stroke. My wife couldn't deal with that. So here I am, becoming disabled, losing a business, and becoming divorced. Now, those are three kind of big events in a person's life, even if you take one at a time. But having all three at the same time, that's quite a lot to deal with. So, after that little tearful moment in the boardroom, and I went back home and had to give it some serious thought as, what am I going to do now? That's when I started analyze my situation. I said, right, so these are the three big things in your life. You got two choices here. You can be beaten, or you can face it head on. And how do you face it head on? Because there's no manual. I can't go down to the shop and buy a manual how to get through this. So the approach I took was to turn it on its head. Instead of saying I've got three huge matters to deal with, I said to myself, well, you've now got choices. You've got three choices of what you can deal with. And the minute you've got choices, you feel empowered, because it's up to you if you want to deal with the marriage, or if I want to deal with the business or my disability. Now, I could choose. So that gave me power. Even though it was hidden power. But it gave me the sense of I'm in control of this. And I think that's the biggest thing, is taking charge of the situation and looking for the positives. So if I looked at all the negatives, man, I wouldn't stand a chance. So I turned it on its head, looked for the positives, and that's what I focused on. And that allowed me to start getting back on my feet. It's taken me a long time, I'm not going to lie to you. The foundation I started in 2010, and that was never part of our plan in my life. But because I tried to reach out for support, nothing was available. and especially for a younger stroke survivor. So the one support group I did attend was filled with 60 and 70-year-olds. And in that support group, I said to the guys, all right, cool, we've all had strokes, so we've got that in common, but I've still got 30, 40 years to live. Okay, how am I going to deal with this? You guys are already in retirement. So, you don't have to worry about going out and earning a living. That led me on a path to start the foundation with another stroke survivors. I don't know if you remember Charlene. She was 31, single mom, so her dynamic was slightly different to mine, but here we are, two 30-year-olds, disabled, both physical and hidden disabilities. Now, the hidden disabilities is the hardest to explain, because back then my speech was still quite bad. People thought, okay, well, this guy's dumb. He's stupid. So you got to fight against the misconceptions that exist and the myths that exist. Started the foundation, and then the first project for the foundation was obviously to raise some money, because NPO just doesn't get given money. So my thinking was, to raise money, you got to do something different. You got to stand out. And what do people least expect from stroke survivors who were in wheelchairs, walk with crutches? And so I thought, okay, let's start the walk, and do a walk from Messina down to Cape Town. Okay, and even my neurologist said, no, it's a bad idea. And I said, well, I'm walking. What am I doing? And it's so bad. Okay, I didn't realize it was 6.5 months later, I'd still be walking. But you do something different to stand out. And we did quite well. We got on TV, we got a lot of airtime. But in my personal opinion, one of the biggest things I learned from the walk was that I got to experience what stroke meant in the rural areas of South Africa, which I would never have been made aware of if I hadn't gone there. And that's when you start learning about the myths that you're bewitched. And I went into one guy's house, and the whole family just ignored him. And he was the father of the family. He was in the corner of the couch, in the corner of the room, and he was just ignored. So that broke my heart. I said to them, at the end of the day, he's your father. I said, no, he's bewitched. So anyway, that was the launch of the foundation. And then obviously I went further with being invited to the World Stroke Organization. So got quite far with stroke and raising stroke awareness.
You're doing amazing. So if people want to just look more into that, it's the Stroke Survivors Foundation.
Strokesurvivors.org.za.
Because I think it's really important that message gets out there. But for me, if we're going back to the entrepreneurial side, you found a problem from your own experience and turned it into a value add back to the rest of the country through the foundation. And now I know you have support groups all over the country, and you're helping a lot of people to deal with this most unexpected incident that happens. Sure.
People go through,
and since then,
so people go through a lot of trauma. Okay, and what society don't realize is, yes, I had the stroke, but the burden falls on my family. Okay, and they are ignored. Okay, in the hospitals, they focus on the stroke survivor, which is great. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but for the stroke survivor, life only begins when you're discharged from the hospital, because that's when you go home. Because in hospital, you've got doctors, nurses, therapists looking after you. So it's great. It's when you go home, when you sit there with your wife and she looks at you and says, and now what? Yeah, how am I going to hold you up? How am I going to carry you to the shower, to the bathroom, or get you off your wheelchair into the bed? So, we're changing those things, and we're changing the discharge protocols in hospitals to connect the family with ourselves, because we can go and speak to the families. A lot of the things that I went through, we can avoid just by communication. Simple things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that work. I know it's adding a lot of value.
Thank you.
And then from there, I know, so you mentioned you went to the world, you went overseas, you were involved in one of the few people in the world to create a Bill of Rights for stroke survivors. So you've had a great, exposure in something like that. But you've also come back and started some other businesses. Is that right?
Yeah.
You're involved with
Yes.
Hempsol and Bee Beverages?
Yeah. So I'm not going to lie, I did start getting into business earlier, but my confidence was nowhere near where it needed to be. So I did dabble in a few other ventures, but I kind of had like 1 foot in it. So I wasn't truly committed. And they kind of fizzled out. And yeah, I kind of knew that because I wasn't committed to the business. And when you go into business, it's all about confidence. Okay, if you're not confident in yourself and in your product, you're not going to achieve, because you're going to go and sell your product to somebody, your product or your service to somebody. And if they don't buy into you as a person, they're not going to buy into your business. So, yeah, I wasn't up to speed. I wasn't up to, I didn't have the tiger's eye, the eye of the tiger. Sorry, there you go. So, it took me a long time to get that confidence to go back into business and sit down at a table and negotiate with people and believe in myself that, I am capable again. Because it's all about confidence. It truly, truly is. And confidence comes with positive thinking and believing in your product. If you can put those things together, you can overcome any hurdle that's thrown at you. So through my stroke, there were 3 words I live my life by: adapt, improvise, overcome. Those 3 words, no matter what is thrown at you in life, you can overcome everything. Because it just gives you the ability to analyze what is happening and then think it through clearly and unemotionally, just process the facts. And then you can find solutions to overcome that. So those 3 words, I live my life like that: adapt, improvise, overcome. And whatever's thrown at me, be it a traffic cop pulling me over, then I get my KFC ready.
So I wanted to talk a bit more about that adapt, because it is something that comes up a bit with my with knowing you. So what do you mean by adapt? Is because you said there it's about acknowledging the reality, facing the facts. But for adapt to me sounds like shifting. It sounds like a adjustment of some sort. So
you have to be, because if you're rigid, okay, so that means you start off with an idea and you think, this is what I'm going to do. What happens if your idea is wrong? Okay, you're not going to succeed. So it's great to have an idea, but how you get there, you have to be fluid and you have to be able to adapt. So, if ego is also quite a big thing. So you've got to, I learned that early in hospital with my stroke, because I had to wait for somebody to come and tie my shoelaces. And I thought, you know what, forget about it. How can I? There's no ways. I've known how to do my shoelaces since I was 5 years old, and I've got to wait for somebody. So early on, I realized, oh, your ego is going to get bruised here. So rather eliminate your ego so that it doesn't become a problem for you. So yeah. If I had kept my ego and be headstrong and stubborn, which sometimes are a good thing. Okay, you need to have a bit of stubbornness, but you've got to be open to adapting, because maybe, just maybe, you miscalculated, or you've maybe got it wrong. So allow for that, because the minute you allow for it means you allow for other input, and maybe that could change your course a little to actually get to the goal that you wanted to reach. Because we're not always 100% right, and there are many ways to get to your goal. There's not only one path.
Yeah, that's so true. So the adapt and improvise, what's different there? What's the distinction between? Because adapting is what to the current situations, improvising is.
So I think adapt is when it's out of your control. Okay, you throw in something that you've got to adjust to, and improvise, it's in your control. So you see the problem and you say, okay, let's rather try a different route. So I think those are the two big differences. One is out of your control, one is in your control. And I've often heard people say, what is stress? And somebody once said, stress is worrying about other people's problems. I don't know how true that is, because you let them become yours. Yeah. I haven't made a decision on that yet, if I believe that it's all other people's problems.
No, I was going to say, because it's a full-time job just managing my own problems. I don't need to take on other people's problems as well, because then, you've got double the amount of problems.
Yeah.
Hey, when you look back then, just talking a bit more about failure then, so obviously you've got this philosophy of adapt, improvise, and overcome to whenever life throws us a curveball. But have there ever been failures, like I put inverted commas, things that have happened that have been the result of you? So not life throwing you a curveball, but your own doing.
Absolutely.
Any examples there, and how you've learned what you've learned from that?
Yes, I have made mistakes, errors, and more often than not, it's because you haven't done enough. I want to use the word strategizing, but that's like a very business term. But you just haven't thought it through properly. So, and again, I'll say ego sometimes gets in the way, where you let your ego make the decision, and sometimes it's the wrong thing to do. So, when I got into those other business ventures, I knew I wasn't getting in 100%. So the chances of me being successful were limited. It would be more luck that played a bigger part than my actual contribution. But again, that was in the back of my mind, that was me building up my confidence. So I started off in the E leagues, and I built my way up to the D, C, B, and A team. So I think so. Can I say it was a calculated failure? I'd like to take credit for that, but no. I just I'm not scared of failure because that's the only way you learn. So if you don't put it out there, you're not going to, even your thoughts, how many times have people come up with a great idea and then it just goes nowhere? Why is that? Maybe you didn't have the confidence to take it through all the way, or maybe in your mind it was a good idea, nobody else's, because maybe they saw things that you didn't see. So failure is a good thing. Don't be afraid of failure, because how are you going to learn?
So you've said a few things which is very close to my language and to my heart, is the building confidence. Because what I know about confidence is it only comes from practice, from actually getting your hands dirty, from being active in whatever it is you're trying to build the confidence in. So that's why I like how you say it was a calculated failure. You went into those businesses knowing that what you would gain was the next level of confidence, because what you could contribute, you would gain confidence in that. And you also speak about self-belief, which is closely related. So maybe how do you believe in yourself again? How do you build that self-belief? Is it literally just from failing, as you say, and learning and
Yes,
trying again?
I think absolutely.
Or is there more to it?
And yeah, I think it's building up trust in yourself. So, once you've got your idea or your product or your service, and you're the master of that, the ins and outs. So nobody can challenge you on your knowledge of what you're selling. Okay, that gives you confidence. But if you're going to sell a product and you're not really convinced, and maybe this, you've got to know your product inside out, and the only way you can do that gives you the confidence to sell your service or product. And the only way you get that confidence is by learning and learning and learning and questioning, throwing every single possible question that you can expect or can think of. Try and think it all through, all the scenarios. Try and, you poke holes at your own concept and see if you can outthink the person you're going to see, so that they can't catch you out. And that's all about, by doing that, you're building confidence in yourself and your product. It's because you've done all the possible scenarios. And most importantly, I think, answer them honestly. Don't lie to yourself, because that's going to come out very quickly. So, I think just be truthful to yourself. Because if you lie to yourself, then, you're on a losing path.
And you mentioned trusting yourself, and I think that self-belief and self-trust comes from doing that hard work and being that honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Because when we're dishonest with ourselves, how can we trust ourselves? We don't trust anyone else who's dishonest. And
people will see straight through that.
Yeah.
No one is that good an actor or actress. Yeah. People, if there's a flaw, people will find it. So you try and find that flaw first.
Yes, because then you can work out an answer or a strategy or a solution for that flaw and improve your product.
You can improvise.
Or service.
Yeah.
Yep. And overcome it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've learned from you about being committed to whatever you're doing. And the self-belief, self-trust, self-confidence that only comes from doing the honest, hard work related to what you're trying to achieve. I love your adapt, improvise, and overcome. taking calculated failures. And that, you know, it's so wonderful to hear that you're not scared of failure, that you see it as the learning.
Yeah, I think if you've got a negative mindset, you fear failure. Okay, because that will just further install the negative mind thinking. So if you positive thinking, you'll see a fear as a learning experience, not the opposite.
And then what about risk? We spoke a bit about it. Would you say that you are risk fit, or what's your thoughts on that concept of actually?
Sure.
So I call risk fit our ability to take risks and manage the fear.
So I think I'll take calculated risks. In other words, I'll think of the worst case scenario, and if I can live with that or sustain that worst case scenario, I'm prepared to go and take that risk. So, yeah, that's how I see risk. If I can sustain it all going pear shape, then fine. If not, then I won't take it. So
again, it's the thinking about the risk.
Yeah, and just see if take the worst case scenario and say, are you happy? Will you live with that? And answer it honestly. And if you say, no, I'm not, then say, okay, to what extent are you prepared to risk? And then just find your levels of risk that you're prepared to take. You know, are you prepared to lose one finger or 10 fingers?
Yeah, and I'm sure each risk is obviously different, has its different levels of
course.
Danger in a way. Yeah.
Consequences. Yeah, there's always that risk versus gain. Yeah. If you risk this, you're going to get that. And if you lose it, well, you're going to go back to level 3. Yeah. That means, okay, it becomes also a time factor. Yeah. If you do take the risk and take the hit, how far back do you get knocked? If you're a person that has no patience, then there's no ways you can do that. And business, setting up a business is about patience and time. You've got to pay your dues. There's no instant quick fix. And if there is, perfect example, you look at Prime. Okay. That was a huge social media and digital media success. But they had the worst product. And it's gone now. So for 6 months, they cruised. And now? So, yeah. Maybe that's what they wanted to do. Maybe they achieved their goal. Who knows?
But yeah, if you're into the long term, though, in terms of business, adding value in a longer term way, you need to do the work to make sure your product. So that's what you're saying is
the owners of Prime, they're boxers. So yeah, maybe their brains have been bashed, but and they want to make the money quickly. Get in, make a few hits, take your money and run.
Which is I suppose a business model in its own.
Absolutely.
As you said, you don't know what their goals.
Well, it's easy to do that when you've got $10 million in your account. Then you're prepared to take the risks because their risk was complete failure. Okay, so what is complete failure for them? We lose $1 million. Yeah, that's cool. I've still got $9 million in the bank. No big risk. So there's your risk and reward.
So just remember, one of the other things you mentioned in our discussion was, I think it was related to a bit of the ego, and that it was about other people, that maybe they can see something you can't see. So what has the role of other people in terms of giving you feedback, criticism, holding you accountable? What is that? And support, I suppose, because it's not only the people pointing out where things don't go, it's also how they support us when we're really battling. What has the role of other people been in your entrepreneurial endeavors?
So I think the first thing you need to do is figure out what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. So once you've figured that out, then you know what your weaknesses are, and you can seek to bolster those weaknesses. And that's where you need to have other people's input. But having said that, even with your strengths, I still get people I know that are stronger than me in my strengths, and I'll bounce it off them. So, maybe that's my fail safe. I'll always double check to make, maybe that comes from my stroke. I'll always double check things. And just to make sure that I'm on the right track or I've done the right thing. Because maybe in the back of my mind, there's always that bit of doubt, or maybe that's just my fail safe that I fall back on. But always, look at your strengths, be honest with yourself again, and say, is that a strength or is that not? Is it a weakness? And marketing is a very funny thing to say it's your strength, because marketing is such a huge thing. And there are so many different levels to marketing. I don't believe one person is an expert across every single field. So, you got to bring in those resources who have strengths in those categories or market segments that you're going into. Because, what have I got in common with a 20-year-old? I have no clue what their thinking is about. And I'm an old man now, so as much as I feel that I'm still 25 years old, I'm not. Apples with apples.
Yeah, and it's useful to surround ourselves with different expertise. The diversity is always adds to the mix.
Exactly. And that's the same thing I would say to young people. Okay, I know it's hard to believe, but you don't have all the answers. So seek somebody more experienced that can throw you a bit of knowledge, because there's things. Now I'm starting to sound like my grandfather. There's things that, you haven't anticipated that'll happen. And that's the hard thing about being a youngster trying to start off in business. You don't have that experience. And experience plays a huge role in setting up a business. And I think you can buy experience, just speak to the right people.
And that's why I think it's to have this mindset of not seeing things like failure as the end, the finish, it's seeing it as the path, because it's those failures that help us gain the experience.
That's building.
That widens our knowledge, and
you build on your failures, because that's just laying a more solid foundation. That's all it is.
Well, I've got some rapid fire questions to ask you just as we come to the end of our time together. But just if anyone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to get hold of you?
You can use my Gmail email address. It's George Scola at gmail.com. SCOLA.
Great. I'll have that in the show notes as well, plus a link to the foundation.
Yeah.
All right. So you ready? So these questions are just share the
easy with the speed. I've had a brain injury. I've only got half a brain. Go easy.
Okay. All right. What comes to mind when I say risk?
It's a way to challenge yourself.
Cool. What is your secret weapon for bouncing back from a setback?
Adapt, improvise, overcome.
What's the most important lesson you've learned as an entrepreneur?
Be honest with yourself.
Oh, what's the best advice you have ever received as an entrepreneur?
Don't do it. No. Oh, sure. Best advice. Can I come back to that?
That's cool. And it's just interesting your first response was don't do it, because there's like, what happened when someone said to you don't do it? What did that lead to?
It made me dig deeper and analyze if I was doing whatever I was doing was dumb or maybe a really good idea. Because the guy that says don't do it, maybe they'd have no clue about what you want to do. So, yeah, if you're going to get that advice from somebody, make sure that I'm not going to give advice to a farmer because I know nothing about farming. So, just get advice from somebody who's got experience in whatever field you enter in.
Yeah.
And also not only one piece of...
So ask many people.
Yeah. Because everyone's got an opinion, especially in today's time. Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah, that's so true. And I do find that the more people you ask, you start to see common threads coming through.
Exactly.
And those are very useful when you get common bits of information coming. Yeah. Okay, last one. What inspires you to get out of bed in the morning?
I love life. Yeah, it's just whatever life throws at you, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love life. I love living. Yeah. Life is good.
Yeah. It is. So, any last thoughts? I mean, looking back on your journey, all the curveballs that life has thrown your way, as well as the ones you've done yourself, as we say, in the mistakes we made. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with that fear of failure and hesitating to take the leap in their entrepreneurial career?
You've got to hang in there. You don't. Firstly, if you're honest with yourself, you'll be able to know if it's worthwhile sticking in for the long run. But if you're lying to yourself, then you're not doing yourself any favors. But believe in it, commit to it, and give it your all. Don't pull punches. That's it.
Oh, thank you, George.
Pleasure.
This has been Risk and Rise, and I'm Telana Simpson. Thank you so much for joining us. And please, if you enjoy the show, share it with a friend and perhaps subscribe or rate us on your favorite podcast app. It really does help us to reach more people, because I am trying to help not only South Africa, but all of us to overcome our fears of failing and making mistakes and learning to rise and tackle risk in the most constructive way, because I know the value and the benefits it can bring us. So help me with my little mission here, and please share the show with someone in your life today. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can get hold of me on hello@riskandrise.co.za. And until next time, I hope that you go and adapt, improvise, and overcome, just as George does. And let's risk and rise together.
Thank you for joining me on Risk and Rise, where we face fears, conquer challenges, and rise above adversity to achieve our dreams. Find out more at riskandrise.co.za.